So the first thing that you're going to want to get a hold of is a chocolate mold. You can find these at Walmart, you can find them at Michael's, you can find them on Amazon, pretty much everywhere. And what you're going to want to get is the 1.5-inch molds. There's larger ones as well, and I highly recommend, if you get one size, you might as well get another size, because these are actually quite useful to use with polymer clay. So I'm going to be using this 1.5-inch chocolate mold, and you're also going to need an umbrella cutter. Now these also come in different sizes, and right here I'm going to be using the 1.5-inch umbrella cutter, and the link to these are in the comments. I designed this to make this super easy to cut for umbrellas. You're also going to need some helpful tools. Will be your tissue blade. You might need an X-Acto knife if there's something that you need to cut. I like using tiny round knitting needles because this makes smoothing sides really easy, and I love working with the knitting needle. The other thing that you're going to need are head pins, an assortment of head pins. So you're going to need the round eyelet ones and the flathead pins. And there's different ways that you can use these, but I'm going to show you just the different kinds of ways that you can use these to go with your umbrellas. And you are also going to need some beads, crystals or beads. I'm using between 4mm crystals. These are just Aurora Borealis crystals. I'm using these Aurora Borealis clear but see-through. They're kind of see-through, but they're Aurora Borealis, so they shine like rainbows. So, and these are called tube beads. And then I'm using these 2mm purple Aurora Borealis glass seed beads. So those are the things that you absolutely need in order to make this easy. Now, some other things that you can use are molds, small ones of course. You can use silk screens. You can use the larger silk screens or the smaller ones. I just happen to have this little tiny filigree one, and I absolutely love it. Another thing that would prove helpful if you have it are stamps. You can use stamps with this. And I'm also going to be using, I have this really teeny tiny heart cutter that I got from with a set of heart cutters for a cookie frosting making, stuff like that. So I'm going to be using that as well. Other helpful things will be crystals. You do not have to have these. This is optional, along with the stamp and these are all optional. You do not have to have any of these things, but these things can prove to add to your design to make them even more fun. Any kind of teardrop beads or tube beads that kind of flare out like this, those are really cute on these. So I'm going to show you the different ways that I have done these particular umbrellas. And that's the first thing you're going to want to figure out is what color do you want your umbrella to be. Now, if you happen to have all of these colors here, which I'm using Primo, and I'm using only a block of white here. This is just a part of a Primo pack. So if you were to compare this to a block of Sculpey Primo, and it's only just over one block, so you're not going to be using much clay, and you're actually going to be able to get more pairs of earrings. You could probably get 8 pairs of earrings out of this one block, maybe a little less, we'll see. But anyway, you don't need much white clay. You do not even need this much black. This is only a palm size of black. And I have Primo yellow, orange, magenta, dark purple, light blue, and green. And as you can see, there are different ways that you can do your umbrellas. This is green with black seed beads, a 4mm biocone crystal, and yellow seed beads, and these are the little flower molds that I showed you earlier with the filigree. This is using the filigree screen, and this particular mold right here, these two tiny flower molds, work perfectly on here. Now the other thing you're going to figure out near the end is what kind of earring findings that you're going to use. Now I find with these particular umbrella earrings, the umbrellas are already so long that I decided to use these shorter earring findings right here. So I'm going to be using these instead of the French hook. So if you decide to use the crystals on the bottom, this is what a simple umbrella arm would look like. These are literally just the tube beads and the seed beads. So that is just these, just simple 2 beads on one post, which is the flathead post. So that's that post right there. And I made that just using 3 seed beads in between each post and then rounding it off at the end. Now, you can get fancier. This is the next fanciest. This is using that little crystal bead I showed you earlier, and the tube beads and the seed beads. And that's a little bit more fancy. And here's the fanciest, in my opinion, is using a dangle to where you can either use a raindrop bead or a crystal bead, whichever bead that you deem, and you can use any color you'd like as well. So with these earrings right here, I actually even used a heart crystal at the top. And mind you that this particular, when you add, the more you add to your earrings, the heavier they get. These particular earrings have a teardrop at the bottom, 4 teardrops around the umbrella, plus the heart crystal. And I can wear these, but I do notice that there is a bit of weight on here. So I'm going to show you. These right here are much lighter. There's no crystal except for one little crystal at the top and then one little crystal at the bottom, and these are super light. So just mind, the more crystals you put on, a lot of people aren't going to mind, but if there are people that are sensitive to wearing heavy earrings, I wouldn't put too many crystals on there. So I'm going to take these off to the side. These are different versions. If you only have 2 colors, you can use white and blue, and you don't have to use any silk screens, nothing at all. This is black and white, and I'm going to turn these into steampunk type umbrella earrings right here. And then of course our rainbow earrings, which kind of mimic these, except I chose to use black for the umbrella spines instead of white. So after you figure out what color you're going to use, I'm going to use the rainbow, and I'm going to show you how you do not even use hardly any of this clay right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to chop each color in half. Now remember, each one of these is just a little bit over a palm here. Alright, so now that these are cut in half, you're going to pick whichever side you want, and some of them might be smaller, some sides might be larger. It just depends on how much color you want. With the yellow, I'm just going to flatten this down thin, just like this, and then I'm going to shape it into the shape of a triangle. Nothing pretty. Then I'm going to do the same thing to the orange. And then the pink, flatten it down, making a triangle, and just going along here. I'm going to use the smaller of the purples because this is a dark purple, so I don't need much. I'm going to use the largest of the blue. right, so now that I have that, I notice that my yellow is rather large, so I'm going to cut just a piece off of that and take all of these and put them off because I do not need those now. I can save those for later. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my pieces together, a little bit offset. The more offset this is, and I'm going to add a touch of blue to this one because there's not much blue on this, the more of that color I'll have. And then I'm just going to make these sides square and flatten this down here so that they're all touching. Now I'm going to take my block and I'm going to stretch it using my clay as a length that I want my white to stretch. Doesn't need to be even, it's nothing perfect. Just squeezing along. A little bit more. Now they both reach side to side, and I'm going to just push along here, and I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it in my pasta machine. Now, this is my Atlas 150 pasta machine. I have it set at 0, and what I'm going to do, and this is a little tip that you can use, is since my cutter for my umbrella is a 1.5 inch, what I want to do is keep the length of my my clay here at that exact length so I don't have to fuss with it too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 blocks of clay. First I'm going to stick one in here, and I'm going to keep this other one to the side, and I'm going to put this in my pasta machine, but I'm going to make sure that this is bunched up enough to fit into that space right here. Now the block of clay isn't sitting straight upwards, it's sitting to the side. So it's the long way in my pasta machine, and now I'm going to run this through my pasta machine, and I don't have to worry about my clay flaring out. So this is what it looks like. And just fold it over again, put it in my pasta machine, and run it through. And I'm going to do that a couple more times. And now you'll start to see the color is not on really either side, but it'll start to come through. Okay, so now that it's starting to come through, I'm going to take my pasta machine and I'm going to put it down to a 3. And this just speeds up the mixing process. And with this block of clay here, I never worry about my clay flaring out or getting larger than I want it to be. Okay, so now I'm going to start taking my clay and I'm going to squeeze it together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wiggle this, and I'm pushing together as I'm wiggling. Pushing together as I'm wiggling. You can see it rippling. That's because I'm pushing it together. And I'm going to do that on both sides. Then I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to wiggle it together. Now when you fold this over, make sure there's no air between the clay because you don't want any air pockets in there. And you're going to wiggle it and push together. You're just pinching it together lightly as you're wiggling it. And now I'm going to measure it. Now this is laying down and this is straight upwards. Now I have exactly the amount in this spot that I need for my clay to be in order for me to fit my umbrella cutter. That's exactly how much clay I need. So I'm going to sit here and wiggle this until it fits into that spot. Now I don't have to get both sides that exact size, because once I put it through the pasta machine, it's going to reduce itself into that size. I think this one is a little bit, yeah, it's a little bit bulky, like it's been pressed down. So I'm going to make sure when you use 2 blocks of clay, see how this one's kind of flattened out and wider, and this is a nice tight package. I prefer to use the tight packaged clays to do this in my machine. Alright, so now this is just barely fitting in here, and I'm going to run it through my pasta machine, and it's squeezing everything together and mixing it just like that. That is totally fine. Fold it over very carefully, because you're going to have a nice long strip. And like I said, you're going to get more than enough pair of earrings out of this You could probably use half of this amount and get the desired amount of earrings, but they're super, super cute. You are not going to regret making these for your markets. Now I'm going to put this through my pasta machine as many times. You can leave it like this. You can let your umbrella look like this. But I'm going to put it through my pasta machine until I have this kind of smoothness. So I'm going to speed this up and get through this. Alright, so once you get it out to the smoothness that you want it, you're going to want to put this at a thickness of 5 on your pasta machine. And I've worked with this extensively, and 5 seems to be the best thickness because it lightens up on the ears and it's thick enough to hold what it needs to hold. You can try it at a 6, but 5 seems to be the best that I've worked with. Now that you have your strip set out, now you're going to take your cutter and you're going to start cutting out as many pairs of earrings that you want to play with. And do save your scraps. If you put them exactly where they were, you will be able to put this through the pasta machine and potentially get even more, or you can save this little dandy piece for another project. Alright, so now you just have to figure out what you want to put on your umbrellas. So there's different ways that you can do it. This one here I used nothing but molds and black clay. This one here I knew to use nothing but white clay and blue clay. This right here I just used the spines. And this one right here I haven't done anything to, because you can either paint this or you can add liquid clay. I would recommend translucent. Coat the entire piece, and you can lay your spines down after it's cooked or before it's cooked. Putting them in the mold, it doesn't matter. This one right here was placed inside the mold and used clear liquid polyclay, and I coated the entire piece, added the flowers, and then baked this just like it is right here after I put the silk screen on and baked it. So I baked this twice. So first what I did was I laid the silk screen on raw clay, and that's what I'm going to do here to show you guys. I dab my card in the paint and then drive the silk screen. Make sure the silk screen is down on top of your clay lightly. Make sure that you've covered the entire piece. And I'm going to do the same thing with my other piece here. And voila! Alright, so now after that is done, let's say you don't have a silk screen. Let's say all you have is a stamp. And this right here is one of my favorite stamps to work with. This is a Christy Friesen called In the Meadow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp these two on the side. And make sure these are nice and indented. Now I'm sure I pushed the corner over here a little bit, so I'm just going to take the rounded side of my X-Acto blade and I'm just going to push that in. Same over here. Just pushing those corners right back in, because they weren't pushed out too far, but... Okay, so now these are stamped. And let's say these two right here, I'm going to use my cute little... This is just a bunch of little flowers. You can really use just about anything that you'd like to use. And my accenting color, if you've noticed, is I'm using black, so I'm just going to use a tiny little piece and one little accent color. Now remember all that extra that I told you to hang around with? You can use that in your mold as well. So if you wanted to, you can add a flower to even your silk screen over here, because that's what I did right here. I added flowers on top, but I baked this first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little tiny bit of green. Now whatever I do for one umbrella, I have to do for the other. I'm going to stick this as close to the center as I can possibly get it. Now, if you want to measure exactly where the center of your umbrella is, you can. I can see this is a little bit off. And there we go. And I just rinse and repeat and do that again with the other one. Okay, so now we have one silk screen, one set of stamped, and one with a flower mold. Now if you want to do one that has hearts on it, that's pretty easy. You just take you can either make hearts from hand, or you can use a cutter. This cutter is extremely small. And what I do is I run the black through my pasta machine at the very thinnest thickness that I can go down to. And then I just make 8 hearts, because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8. Okay, so after you have your hearts cut, just take them and shape them. And I like to leave a little bit of space around the corner, just so you can see the color, the rainbow underneath. Really highlights that heart shaped. And I go to every other one, so I only need a total of 4. Plus, my hearts are a little bit too big to do one on every little spine. We have these last 2 pieces here, and I'm going to put these side by side, is the spines. And make some fine little noodles here. You're going to make one go right at the tip, push it down with your finger, and pull up so that your clay is sticking straight up. Take another spine, go exactly on the opposite side, push it down onto the tip, and then meet these 2 in the middle. Now take another spine and go in the other direction, like you're making a cross, and meet them all up at the middle. Now, it doesn't matter if they're long. Actually, if they're long, it just makes it easier for you in the long run, because then you can make sure they're all even. And you just go along your corners and join your spines at the middle. Now once I get to the middle, I squeeze around the edges just a little bit. I'm pushing in, not down, just in. Pinching all these spines together, making sure it stays nice and round. And then I'm going to take this off the table so that you can see what I'm doing here. So I'm pinching around, just pinching that around so that it all just comes together. And then I'm going to take my X-Acto blade and I'm going to chop that off very gently. I'm going to put this down so I can put my finger down, and I'm just going to chop this top off. So it's like this. See? And now I'm going to do the same thing over here. Start putting my spines on, point it upward, take the other spine and do the same thing. And I don't hang my spines off the tip, I just put them right there on the tip of the umbrella. And of course, you want to do your cross first because that makes it so it's easier for you to see exactly where your halves are and your quarters. So you can make your lines more straight. And then again, I'm just squeezing around the sides. Not pushing downward, just squeezing. I'm going to take this off so you can see again what I'm doing. See, it's almost like a flower this way, but you're just squeezing the tip. And then you can use your flat blade to do this as well. I just prefer my X-Acto blade. And you just cut that little nip off. And there we have it. Fix my little spine right here. If your spines are not even, this is where you would choose to straighten them up a little bit. I like using my knitting needle to kind of straighten them out. Alright, so now that I have that where I want it, I'm going to take a toothpick and I'm going to put a hole right here in the middle and twist my toothpick to make sure the hole is all the way through on both of them. So now that I have my holes in all of my pieces here, now I need to take my silicone mold and I need to place these upside down in the mold. Now the reason that you're putting your hole in now instead of later, and you can do it later, but if you do it now, it makes it easier to put your umbrellas in your mold if they don't have anything on them. So these ones right here, the ones that I stamped, do not have anything lifting them up really, so sometimes they can suction cup to the side of your silicone mold, making it hard to push them in and leaving a bubble and an indentation. This way the air gets through the middle hole and you don't have to worry about an uneven umbrella. Now, you could use these mini funnel, you could use the mini funnels, but I noticed that when you put your umbrella in the funnel and it's done cooking and you pop it out, there is a slight circular shine to this, to where the umbrella touched the mold, so it's shiny there and then not shiny around the rest of it. So it's kind of noticeable, but you could get away with it if this is all you had. You can bake it in these silicone funnels, but I highly recommend getting a chocolate mold instead. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover this with tin foil and I'm going to bake it at 275 for 45 minutes. So we'll come back when everything's all done and cooked up and ready to go. So I went ahead and popped these out of the mold, and as you can see, everything looks fantastic. All of these have started with the little topper, which is just the little bead at the top, and then we have the umbrella arm, which is just the long bead. Right here is just the little heart bead that I have on top of this one, and then the other one has a crystal heart. Each of these umbrellas will have a little topper at the top, whether you use seed beads or crystals. For those of you that choose to use silk screen or paint your umbrellas, you're going to want to put something on them if you want to make sure that they're going to last over time and be scratch resistant. So I have two products here that you guys can try out. One that I've had for quite some time, and a new product that I have just gotten a hold of within the last couple of days. And so the first one is the one that you can purchase. I believe you can find this at Michael's, Hobby Lobby, Walmart. And this one right here is from somebody who has been in the polymer clay industry for many, many years and knows exactly what to use on polymer clay that will make it the most successful creation that you can make. So, and I've been excited because this is a super matte shine-free sealer right here, and this one right here does create some shine. So sometimes you don't want the shine and sometimes you do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat these both with one sealer each and show you the difference so that you can decide which one that you are going to use for your project. Now the first one I'm going to use is this this one you can get at Tiny Pandora, and it's super matte shine free. And I'm going to put it in this little cup that this comes with. And I imagine you don't need much because you don't need much of this either. And I'm just using a really nice soft brush. I buy these at the Dollar Tree for $1. There is no odor to this, which is nice. Let that dry. Okay, and now I'm going to do the other one, and I'm going to mix this up and make sure it's fully mixed before I use this. Now you can use resin, but if you use resin, you're going to want to use a brush-on UV resin, because you cannot use regular resin with this because it's curved, and so the resin will either drip or move around on you. Now there are two UV paint-on resins, and there's one from Tiny Pandora, and it's a brush-on UV finish, and then there's one from the Heart Polymer Clay Supplies. And the reason I'm not using these today is because my UV machine, I've ordered a new one, and I'm currently waiting on that one to get in, so I'm without my UV light right now. So I'm just going to work with these brush-on finishes. All of them will have these round eyelet head pins, because you're going to need to put this through your umbrella and feed it through the other side. Then you're going to need your topping piece, which is either a crystal or a bead, or you don't even need crystals or beads. Then if you're using a long peg like I am, you're going to need to trim quite a bit of this off. So I'm going to trim that, and then I'm going to take my needle nose and I'll bend that sideways, and all the while I'm holding this underneath with my finger, and then I'm just going to feed this around so that I get a nice little place to hang my earring hook on, just like that. I'll fix that a little better later on. So I'm going to do that to the second one. Make sure the loop is at the bottom and hold that. Put my little topper on. Trim that. Actually, I can trim a little bit more because I left too much on the last one. And again, I take my needle nose, bend it sideways, just like this. And then round it out. Tighten that up a little bit. And voila, I have my top piece. And right now I can add my earring finding on. It's all whatever you decide to do. And there, I have that piece of the umbrella done. I'll do the same thing on the other. And then I just take my posts, which I've already made my crystals, open that back up and feed that onto the little loop underneath here. Make sure it's open enough so that I can get it on here. It keeps slipping away. There we go. Now I'm going to tighten that back on. All right, and there we go. We have one umbrella earring is done. Isn't that cute? And these will be super light because there's no teardrops hanging off around the umbrella. So these are really cute and super light. Now I'll just do that to this next one. Okay, so this part, so if you want to add little gems around your umbrella, like I did with the rainbow, I put teardrops. I didn't put it on every spine, I only put it on every other spine. So I put a hole, only 4 holes, and I added these holes in with my toothpick before I baked it, but if you do not add the holes before you bake it and you decide you do want to hang something from there, just take your hand drill and drill lightly into these holes, which is what I did for these, to clear these out. Even after I put toothpicks in these, I always go and clear them out just a little bit more, because that way the jump rings will fit in those holes a lot better. So the first thing I'm going to do is same thing I did on all these others, which was add the eyelet pinhead, and then I add my topper, which is my bronze looking bead, my owl, and another bronze bead, and then I go ahead and bend it to the side. Clip it short, take my needle news, and there we go, voila. Just add my earring finding to the very top, and that part is done. And now we have, so I could leave it just like this, but I really want to add these to hang off the edges of my umbrella to give it a more steampunk style. So I add my loops and then add my pieces to my loops. What?